So I went down the rabbit hole of trying to learn about what radical forgiveness meant, and I didn't realize how crazy it was going to be. We're going to be discussing the Duggars Belief in radical forgiveness, and I'm going to tell you guys what that is because it's not just normal forgiving people. Some of the things that the man has said that wrote a book about that was incredibly disturbing. This reminds me a lot about IBLP and Bill Gothard. If you guys follow stuff with the Duggars and you've heard about their beliefs and their homeschool curriculum, this just goes in with that as another one of the really disturbing belief systems that they follow that is not healthy. As you guys all know, Josh Duggar faces up to 40 years in prison, and his wife Anna Duggar is not leaving him and has been standing beside him this entire time, even though the 40 years he faces in prison is due to terrible things that he did. I've done a lot of videos about it, and in them I've been very clear with how I just cannot understand how someone who is a mother could stay with somebody like that, and I get countless comments from you guys telling me your theories on why she does. But this is probably the real reason, and after researching into radical forgiveness and knowing she believes in that, it all makes sense. This came from a former family friend of the Duggars called Bauman Fedowski. I don't know exactly how to say it, but this came from Bowman Fedowski. That's what we're gonna go with.
Jana got charged with this, and I commented on it, talking about how I grew up with them and she was a really good person. And some person commented, and she's like, "You did not grow up with them, stop exaggerating." So I had some time. So I actually went and found an old recording of their first ever shows, 14 and pregnant again. Now look. So this is my dad.
I've known the Duggars for a long time. Obviously met Derek when he came into the family.
Same last name, as you can see. And wait for it. This is me. I used to always wear camo for some reason. This is in 2004.
So he would kind of have some insight into the Duggar family because he clearly knew them pretty well. Now, he doesn't have any contact with Anna Duggar anymore, but he used to. And based on conversations that they've had and things that she has said, this is why he says that she won't leave Josh. He said, "Something that people don't seem to understand if they aren't in the cult, honestly, as the Duggars are and everybody else around them, is that they believe in truly radical forgiveness." That was a very strangely worded sentence, but essentially what he is saying is that the Duggars believe in radical forgiveness, which contributes to them being able to stand by somebody as terrible as Josh Duggar. I have been aware of, as I said, the IBLP movement, how culty it is, and the horrific things that they teach children and members of IBLP. Now, the booklets within IBLP are disturbing on their own, and I've talked about them in other videos. The things that they're taught within these booklets strongly influences and contributes to the reason why Josh was even allowed to go back around his sisters after what he did to them when he was 14, 15 years old. And it's the reason why they're so harmful and dangerous, because it's really in defense of the person who harms others and not in defense of the person who was hurt. When you're indoctrinated into the beliefs of things that are within IBLP, you are going to adapt them to your life when situations arise where you need to be practicing said things. Anna's situation, she's having to actively practice what she had been being brainwashed into since she was brought into this world. And then when you add the belief in radical forgiveness on top of what IBLP teaches, it creates this catastrophe. Anna and the Duggar family believe and follow a story that is in the Bible. This Bible story is of an apostle Paul who actually killed Christians, and he said that this conversation comes up a lot within the Duggar family. And I'm like, why would you need to talk about that often? He also talked about their belief in radical forgiveness. He said, "It doesn't matter what you do or how bad it is. They look at it as a sin problem, and they believe that you can come back from it." So Anna, from what I've heard her say, is she probably is going to stand by Josh thinking that he's changed or that he's going to become a better person or come back to Christ or something. That's when I decided to look up radical forgiveness and how is it different than normal forgiveness. So I found a book by Colin Tripping called Radical Forgiveness, and this gave me all the information that I needed. The cover of the book says that it is a revolutionary 5-stage process to heal relationships, let go of anger and blame, and find peace in any situation. Now, it's spoken originally as if this is something that is supposed to help the person who's hurt. I think forgiveness is a great thing, even if you're just forgiving a situation for yourself. I know that I've heard people say that they've mentally forgiven people who have hurt them and that it's helped them. And I support anybody who has been hurt by somebody and doing whatever they need to do in order to heal from what happened to them. So I'm not trashing on forgiveness or moving forward. The person who has had something terrible to them gets to decide what that means for them. Now I'm gonna tell you guys some of the quotes from an interview that this Colin Tripping guy did talking about his book Radical Forgiveness and what it means. And when I'm reading this, I'm like, how could anybody listen to this crap and be like, yeah, that makes sense. He said, when people open up to this possibility that everything happens for a reason, it seems to change not only them and how they feel about it, but it seems to change the situation as well. He also said, but the kicker with radical forgiveness is that there can be no exceptions to the rule. What about child abuse situations? We don't know what the spiritual reasons are why these things happened. But once we open up to the idea that there's a spiritual reason behind everything, then it seems to work. He's basically saying that there are reasons that these terrible things have happened to kids. I can already see some people, because I get some comments sometimes that are just, they're interesting, but I can see some people being like all getting down in the comments like, oh, forgiveness is great, but we need to hear the things I'm highlighting here and my reason why I have a problem with these specific things that are being said. For instance, if radical forgiveness causes you to forgive somebody who hurts children and then put said person back around children again, there's something wrong with that. This whole radical forgiveness thing just benefits the person who's doing the terrible stuff. It just gives them an avenue to keep doing that. It also sends the message to them that you can be forgiven for doing something that terrible. So maybe if you do it again, you'll get forgiven again, because radical forgiveness doesn't have an end point. If you believe in radical forgiveness, you're going to be forgiving that person and letting them do whatever they want to do every single time. There is no stop to it. There is no boundary. The only person that wins is the person who did the terrible thing. He also goes on to say, so the answer is basically, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that, except to the extent that radical forgiveness doesn't work unless you apply it to everything. Everything. And there can be no exceptions. He just goes on to give this huge explanation that it happened for a reason. There's a spiritual reason that innocent lives are affected for the rest of their life. But then at the end, he's like, I don't know. It just works. He then goes on to say he doesn't see anybody as a victim, that you orchestrate the things that happen to you. So if something terrible has happened to you, it's literally because you caused it to happen through the spiritual lens. Like, you have done something that caused that terrible thing to happen to you. And then the person that was interviewing him said, so if they are SA'd through the spiritual lens has somehow orchestrated this for their growth and healing. And his response to that was yes. So he was literally saying that the person who had something terrible happen to them, it's their fault. He also goes on to say that some people get cancer because of the way that they handled their emotions throughout the years. So it's also their fault too. He said if you took a bunch of people and divided them in terms of how they handled their emotions, then those people who repressed and stuffed them were much more likely to get cancer than people who didn't. Basically, what this man is sending in a message is that if you bottle up your feelings and emotions and don't forgive people for these terrible things that they've done, you could get cancer and die from that. When you really pay attention to what they're saying and you stop listening to the big words and the huge, confusing, convoluted paragraphs, and you really start listening to the little pieces of what's in what they're saying, it's really messed up. One thing I've noticed with people that are like in cults or, you know, get a bunch of people to believe the crap that they they say, they usually will have like these very well worded paragraphs and just things that sound nice, but when you really read it, they're not really actually saying anything. It's just a bunch of big words that they put all together to say something that sounds good, to then pull people in who are seeking something and get them wrapped up in this crazy belief system. And all these things are just to bring more people into cults. Now, it's so important to remember that we don't know if this is what she believes, but I'm inclined to believe that it is, considering that the person who said that actually knows the family personally and said that, you know, there are certain things that are brought up in the family repeatedly. Like, it's something they talk about a lot. And as I said, you know, there are a lot of people that are always questioning, like, why do you care so much? You know, because there's kids involved, and when it involves children, I absolutely care, and I will always speak up against it and bring awareness to it and talk about it, because I feel like it's very important to talk about. A lot of these things are being taught within IBLP, and that is still something that is running today. Like, there are still homeschool curriculum being given to kids with disturbing things like this in it. There's still programs that they're giving them, and there's still camps that they're taking them to. There are things still running that have like stuff in it that's just not okay, and it's just not stuff that anybody should be being taught. Do you guys think that this is the reason why Anna Duggar stays with Josh Duggar? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you guys like this video and you want to see more, definitely give it a thumbs up, let me know, and I will be seeing you guys very soon for another video.